Welcome to Satellite's Opening Day Luncheon and Fireside Chat, sponsored by MDA Space. Please welcome to the stage Satellite's guest host, Sarah Cruddas.
Hello, and thank you everyone, and welcome to the opening day, the opening luncheon of Satellite 2025. And for the first time, I'm really excited to say GovMil Space 2025. And before we start, I just want to give a shout out to the team at MDA Space, because I've never seen a group of people so excited to be here, and I know you are the luncheon sponsors. So yeah, give them a round of applause as well. So you're going to be hearing from me for most of the week, so I'm going to keep this brief, but I just wanted to say a few words. First of all, GovMil Space is something which is the result of years, really, of research by the team who put on Satellite to bring the right people together at the right time. So people from government, from industry, and from the military to really start having those right conversations, because we are in a challenging time with space, and you will hear more about this through the week, and you don't need me to tell you about the challenges that we're facing as an industry, everything from how to equip the modern warfighter to challenges in communication and geopolitical climates. But we're also in a time of opportunity. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, and even now, I expected by now we'd have jetpacks and flying cars and holidays to the moon and all this cool kind of space age stuff. And instead, don't get me wrong, we all work in the space industry and it's really cool, but instead we've jumped into cyberspace instead of outer space. All of us carry around a cell phone in our pocket, which is basically a space receiver. But it is because of that, it is because of jumping into this unforeseen cyberspace age that we have the modern space age of today. And I'm going to borrow a quote from Tom Mueller, employee number 1 at SpaceX, who we'll be speaking to later in the week, who said that we are now in the space age. We might have got the timing wrong, but now really is the space age. And of course, it's about astronauts and exploring new worlds and all that kind of cool stuff. But it's also about all of you. Our modern space age is about utilizing the vantage point of space to extend life beyond Earth, to do business in space, to make space a place to do business, not just a place to go, but to also benefit life here on Earth. And what I love about this conference is this year there are 14,500 attendees, which is phenomenal. Half of those are first-time attendees. And we haven't just got attendees from the space industry, because I know, and I say this from experience, us in the space community can sometimes be slightly insular, but we've also got attendees from outside the space industry, because all companies now, all businesses now need to be thinking about how space can affect them. And with that, one final task before I introduce Mike Greenlee, and that is I challenge you, all of you, to make 5 new connections during this conference. It doesn't seem that many, given there's 14,500 of you, but really to use this conference to meet new people, introduce yourself to new people, and find new ways of growing and developing the space industry. So with that, I would like you to all give yourself a round of applause. And so, to kick things off, Mike Greenlee, CEO of MDA Space, is going to be joining us. Just a few words on Mike. So Mike leads an elite team, some of you have here, of more than 3,000 employees across Canada, the US, and the UK. Under his leadership, the company has invested in one of the world's most diverse portfolios of next-generation space technology and solutions, including the new software-defined satellite product line, MDA Aurora. But before we bring Mike out, let's play a video from MDA Space.
In 2024, we unveiled MDA Aurora, our software-defined digital satellite product line, a pioneering solution to drive the growing space economy. The world is more connected than ever. With MDA Aurora, we make it possible to connect anytime, anywhere, whether broadband connecting governments and industries to the most remote locations, or direct-to-device, where we're able to connect people and their cell phones directly to satellites. We're helping to close the digital divide and make connectivity accessible to everyone.
The challenge we need to solve for the broadband software-defined satellite is to provide a very high capacity with a lot of flexibility as well as reliability. The direct radiating array, or DRA, solves part of that challenge by providing very high-power spot beams that are flexible so they can point to any direction using electronic steering and digital beamforming. So at the heart of the satellite, we have an onboard processor that we call the OBP, and this processor is capable of routing tens of gigabit per second of data traffic, either locally or through the whole constellation. It is compliant to DVB standards, and it's powered by a very advanced software that can manage thousands of users simultaneously. Those subsystems are supported by a platform which basically is very efficient power-wise and also designed for high-volume manufacturing. The challenge for the D2D market is actually quite different. What we're trying to do is to close a link between a cell phone and a satellite that can be thousands of kilometers away. Our D2D product focuses on a DRA that is extremely large in diameter, such that we can effectively establish this connection with the user. In this case, our onboard processor is compliant to 3GPP standards, and particularly the 5G NTN standard, and eventually we're preparing it to be compliant also to 6G standards. The platform product for D2D packs a lot of innovation. It has a flat form factor such that we can stack multiple of those on the same launcher. It is very efficient and high power, and also it's designed with high volume manufacturing in mind, which is at the core of the value proposition for both of our products. Both the direct-to-device and the broadband products are actually driven by innovation and flexibility, so they are pushing the limits of what satellites can do.
It's not only about what our satellites do, it's how we're building them. When I started, we were producing one satellite every 2 years. Now we're working at producing 2 per day. We're working alongside machine learning and robotics to create the building blocks that will allow us to develop an automated process and streamline every step. This automation means that we can build multiple constellations at the same time. It's incredible progress.
The exciting part is what this innovation makes possible. We're not just connecting people, we're connecting industries, like agriculture and automotive, and devices of all kinds anywhere across the globe. The possibilities are endless, and this really is just the beginning.
So there we go. Good afternoon. Welcome again to Satellite 2025. As mentioned, I'm Mike Greenlee. I'm the CEO of MDA Space. And I'm very pleased to be with you here again this year to be able to talk about the goings-on of MDA Space as the sponsor for lunch today. I mentioned being here every year and talking about these things. It's interesting, the construct of a year. On the one hand, a year is a long period of time where we're all really busy in our jobs and we're accomplishing many, many things through the course of an entire year. And on the other hand, it just feels like a minute. It feels like just yesterday I was standing here talking with you this time last year. This time last year, we announced MDA Aurora as our new digital satellite product, and it's been a really busy year. The teams at MDA Space have been incredibly busy with Aurora, designing, developing, producing, delivering this new product to the marketplace. Software-defined digital dynamic beam-forming satellite, in addition to working with prospective customers around the world on these new opportunities. So I thought I'd just spend a few minutes with you today just giving you an update on what's going on with MDA Aurora and how things are moving along. As you just saw in the video, MDA Aurora is our new digital satellite, software-defined dynamic beamforming, as the team mentioned in the video. And that there's 2 versions of this product that are now in the marketplace. A broadband version, which was mentioned, bringing high-capacity digital networks to commercial and government customers around the world, and a direct-to-device version, bringing high-capacity direct-to-device communication from a satellite to our smartphone to customers that want to bring those networks around the world. We've been extremely fortunate with Aurora to have really top-tier, Tier 1 anchor customers join us starting last year as this product has now come to market. We announced Telesat and their Lightspeed constellation as the anchor customer for the broadband variant of this product, ordering over 200 of these satellites. It's very nice to launch a new product, and the first thing you get to do is to build 200 of them. And so that's going very, very well. Over the last year, we finished preliminary design review, or PDR, on the broadband version, and this year we're finalizing all the detailed designs, leading to critical design review, or CDR, this year in 2025, heading into production of those broadband satellites in 2026. Similarly, and in parallel, we have an excellent anchor customer for our direct-to-device version of the product in Globalstar. We just announced in Q1 that we signed over $1 billion contract with Globalstar to be able to produce over 50 MDA Aurora direct-to-device versions of our product for them, for their next generation constellation for direct-to-smartphone communication. We actually started that work in the fall of 2023 under an authorization to proceed contract that was at the time announced for an unnamed customer until we were able to announce the full contract this quarter. As a result of that, we've gotten through all the preliminary design review work on our direct-to-device version and finished that last year. This year, same pattern, finishing all the detailed designs to get through CDR this year, and it also to go into production in 2026. So with the broadband version and the direct-to-device version going into production in 2026, we have some additional work that we have going on in terms of the construction of a large-scale advanced manufacturing facility to be able to produce digital satellites in high-volume production. That construction is going on. It's on schedule. I was just there the other day. We have a building complete on its exterior with all the walls and the windows in place, moving now into the interior to finish that as we go through the next few months. And then we will be kitting that out and commissioning all the production equipment in the second half of 2025. So that as we enter 2026, we'll be able to scale up production and get up to a production rate of up to 2 satellites per day. And that's pretty exciting to make this transition for us to go from building unique cellular-based work cells, building a satellite, to then going into production on our first Globalstar constellation, where we're able to produce at about a satellite a week pace, to now next year coming into 2 satellites a day pace. That's pretty exciting. You can imagine that 2 satellites a day, without too much overtime, that's about 400 satellites a year. In a 5-year block, that would be about 2,000 satellites of production capacity. And these anchor customers that we've obtained, we've got a couple hundred satellites in the broadband side with Telesat and 50-odd with Globalstar and direct-to-device. So lots of room to be able to bring on new customers. As a regular conversation with new customers is, do we have the capacity to be able to keep putting out these high-performance digital satellites as we go through the next few years? So lots of great conversations happening around the show this week as we take on these additional conversations. The other interesting thing that happens, I find, when we are working on these new satellite technologies with these new production facilities, that as soon as you start into the conversation with the customer and you're working on this new product, it's amazing to me how fast the conversation goes to the roadmap for the future. As we deliver a satellite to a customer who's going to operate a space-based network, they're talking to their customers about signing up for services on that network, whether that's broadband or direct-to-device mobile. And the customers want to know, well, where's this network going? What are the features of it going to be? What's the capacity of it going to be? If I sign up a relationship with you, where is that going to go in the future? It's been very interesting to me to see how fast that conversation happens, whereby as we move out on MDA Aurora 1.0, before you even get to TDR, you're in conversations about what's going to be the features of 2.0 and what are the features of 3.0 going to be. So productizing satellites, having a standard product with very high levels of commonality between broadband and direct-to-device, engaged in these conversations with large low Earth orbit constellation operators, immediately turns to that roadmap conversation about where is this all going next. And that's been really exciting, and for me, the most surprising new thing that's occurred as we've gone through the last period of time. So we get into conversations on the broadband side about what additional capacity is going to come from that satellite. Same thing on direct-to-device, what additional capacity. It's been really interesting to me the last 3 or 4 years to be working on satellites that had 16 beams of capability, and then all of a sudden satellites that had 128 beams of capability, and then delivering satellites with 512 beams of capability, and now discussing orders with 1,000+ beams of capability and roadmaps that are going to the thousands beyond. So it's amazing how fast this transition is occurring on these roadmaps for additional and additional capability in very, very short technical turns in the satellite industry. And then on the direct-to-device side, the transition to standardization, whereby we're living in the 3GPP world. We are now heading towards versions of, or delivering versions that are getting towards standards-based direct-to-device communications. So working on 5G versions of MDA Aurora direct-to-device with 5G onboard processors and roadmaps that will get us to 6G, of course, with the rest of the industry. So it's very interesting to see the merger that's occurring now between our satellite-based networking and the mobile networking that's occurring in the telecommunications sector, and how all that's coming together on our roadmaps. And you get involved in all kinds of new conversations with new friends as a result of doing that. So it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time for MDA Space, and it's an exciting time for the satellite industry. And the MDA Aurora teams are working extremely hard to be able to bring all this to the market. So we appreciate the opportunity to give you an update on that today, and we look forward to the conversations that we can have throughout the week on how any of this can work in our mutual relationships in the world. I was going to talk a little bit longer today, but Jeffrey applied a speaking tariff, and I'm going to cut it a little bit short and just let you get on to the rest of your lunch. So thanks very much.
Thank you to our sponsor, MDA Space. And now, Fireside Chat, moderated by Satellite Executive Chairman Jeffrey Hill.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the Monday keynote luncheon. Just want to point out a quick thank you to Sarah Credis for being our guest host this year, and for MDA Space and Mike Greenlee, who followed through on his promise to make a tariff joke. That was funny. That was funny. So we're already off to a good start here. I hope you're all as excited as I am right here on day one to talk to some of the most influential leaders in our industry. Among them, our special guest speaker for this luncheon, Adel Al-Saleh, CEO of SES, a leading global connectivity provider based in Luxembourg, operating nearly 70 satellites in 2 different orbits. Since joining SES as CEO in February of 2024, Adel Al-Saleh has spearheaded a strategic vision focused on innovation and growth, solidifying SES's position as a leader in content and connectivity solutions. Under his guidance, SES has successfully followed through on the delivery of its ambitious and groundbreaking second-generation medium Earth orbit satellite system, O3b mPOWER, expanded its reach into new and emerging markets, significantly advanced its digital transformation, and put forth into action an historic merge with another world-leading satellite operator, Intelsat. His focus on customer-centric solutions and strategic partnerships has been instrumental in navigating the rapidly evolving telecommunications industry. And he joins us here today to talk about how SES will shape the future with high-speed, multi-orbit global connectivity. So please give a warm welcome to our special guest, Adel Al-Saleh.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah,
That's a big intro.
that's a lot in 1 year. Adel, thank you so much for being here this morning. It's a big year for SES. First off, you're turning 40 years old, the company. Yep. Congratulations on that milestone. Since its creation, SES has experienced many changes in the way it's positioned itself in the market and to lead satellite technologies and innovation. But arguably, one of the biggest changes for SES is in the process of happening, your impending merge with Intelsat. It's likely top of mind for a lot of people, so could you start by telling us a little bit about how the merger is progressing and what we can expect from the results?
Well, thank you, first of all, having me here. Pleasure to be here. This is my second year, second time on the stage. I just want to reflect a little bit about the history of SES, just a couple of minutes, and then we'll talk about the Intelsat acquisition. So this year is our 40th birthday, right? So we're very proud of that. I mean, it's a company that's gone through a lot of changes, and starting being a media video focused company, launching our first Astra 1 satellite into an orbital slot of 19.2 that remains one of our most critical orbital slots, right? Mm-hmm. And at SES, we feel very proud about a lot of the firsts that we've brought to the industry. One of them, of course, is co-location of satellites, the whole architecture. How do you co-locate satellites in different orbital positions, starting at 19.2 and then expanding it further. introducing the MEO constellation, of course. We were the pioneers. I think a lot of people before me made a bet of this, on this orbit, and we've looked at this orbit multiple times and reviewed it 100 of times. And as I came in, we looked again, and does this make sense for us? Does it scale? Does it give us the type of coverage? How are the economics? We continue to feel very, very strong about that. And of course, if you think about our second generation mPOWER, it continues to prove itself that this is really, really important. And if you ask my guys as well, the engineers will tell you they contributed a lot to the SDS architecture, both starting working with Boeing on mPOWER and then some of the SDS satellites that were coming through. So it's a lot, right, that the company's done, and we're very, very proud of that and continue to move forward. And look, what happened with the Intelsat, I mean, as I arrived, we realized that our industry is beginning to be dominated by what I would call hyperscalers, right? We talk to cloud providers or hyperscalers in the IT industry. It's the same thing that's happening here. Folks with very large constellations, with big investments. And what's going to matter in this industry is, are you going to have scale? Scale not just in your ability to, manufacture, develop satellites, but also scale in terms of market reach, in terms of capability in the industries and so on. And that's what drove us to connect with Intelsat. And Dave Wasgras was thinking exactly the same way, right? If we're going to be surviving in this industry, we need to change the game, both from ability to be very relevant in the vertical markets that we pick to serve and have a differentiating value proposition that can compete with the big players that are in the marketplace, but also being able to have a bigger network, being able to have a scalable ground infrastructure, being able to have the engineering skills. And we'll talk a little bit later about what can you do to the for the customers and in your supply chain. And of course, financially, this transaction is extremely accretive, right? I never hid the fact that for this transaction to work, we got to deliver synergies, right? And the reason for these synergies that is so obvious, we look very similar, the two companies, and when you look at us and how we operate. But the real driver of the value is not just to recognize the synergies, but actually to be able to take them to the R&D and to the investment. We need to be able to invest every year continuously, not through peak and valleys like the industry does today, but actually continuously every year to be able to build the networks both in space and on the ground. If we cannot do that, or if we have to borrow money to do that, it's not going to work. So you need to have that scale, ability to generate cash, a balance sheet to be able to survive. So that's the reason. And look, it's going through its paces. Getting back to your question, we've done a lot of the majority of the smaller jurisdictions are done. We're now in the final phases with the bigger ones, right? So US, European Commission, CMA, a couple of other countries. So it's progressing exactly how we expected it, and we're hoping to close it in the second half of the year. So more to come.
Excellent. I mean, this is a merge that has been talked about for a long time. Now it's not just a merge of assets and knowledge, but it's also a nice alignment of new markets. Like both SES and Intelsat have created their own identity through the markets they've served, and now that comes together to hyperscale, as you say. Yeah. The other thing that you've come into since becoming CEO is you're leading an operator now that is closer directly to the consumer than it's ever been. Yeah. We used to talk about this with the satellite operator CEOs. How close are you getting to the consumer as we're tackling new markets and kind of moving away from those older business models where we're maybe selling to resellers or bulk to a certain industry? How is SES managing that sort of shift to more direct to the consumer? How do you think all operators are going to do that? Just give us your perspective on that, how close SES is now.
Yep. Look, I grew up in the IT industry and spent a lot of time in that industry. And the IT industry has gone through multiple iterations of what is the go-to-market, what's the channel structure, how do we get there, what do the resellers do? What do the value-added resellers do, et cetera, et cetera. And we've kind of gone in multiple experiments there. And look, the conclusion of all that is you as a provider must be close to your customer. If you are not close to your customer, understanding their needs, understanding their business, understanding how your solution actually changes their business dynamics, then you're going to lose in the marketplace. So with that understanding, we are pushing forward in building our capabilities to sell direct to the customers, to be very, very close to them. And in many cases, our channel partners, right, continue to play a big role as long as they have a clear value they can bring to the table. So first of all, selling capacity, which was the business model for many satellite operators for decades, is no longer a successful business model. It just doesn't work. Of course we sell capacity in certain areas, right? But that's now an exception, if you will, versus an integrated solution that you need to deliver to the client, either yourself or with your channel partners, right? And what we've done is we actually build a strategy that worked on that, right? Part of the strategy is figuring out what vertical markets you want to be at, which what we call green zones you want to deliver in, and then figuring out what are the value-added services, what are the managed services that I'm going to build around my offering, which continues to be at the core connectivity, right? To make their life easier, better to consume our capabilities. And we're building those capabilities. And look, a great example that's been proven in SES is look at our government business, especially our government business in the US. And we acquired DRS not too long ago, right? To add those capabilities. Our team in space and defense, US, they're not just selling capacity. They're building networks. They're layering security. They're building portals. They're adding managed services capability where they do things for the client where they need to do. Same thing in our cruise business. It's very, very similar. And what I see Intelsat is doing in terms of Aero and their acquisition of Gogo is not dissimilar. Mm-hmm. But I want to emphasize again, right? It doesn't mean we don't need our channel partners. We need them. But we don't need them to sell capacity. We need them to build solutions, right? And they can do a lot more. We're not doing everything. We're going to need them to do different things in order to provide the end-to-end solution. And many of them have specialized in particular segments and particular areas, like energy. Mm-hmm. There are a few partners that are really good at energy. But we just announced a deal with Viasat Energy, right? Because they know what they're doing, and we're partnering with them to do that. But in addition to understanding the vertical capabilities and the things that the customer needs, we're also building digital layers. Digital layers that allow us to actually deliver our services beyond capacity easier, faster, and of course, digitally, right? So not anymore a lot of hands touching things going forward. I think it's not just a nice to have in order to upsell and provide more services. It's a matter of survival. If you can't do that, you'll be relegated and you'll be commoditized and you'll be selling just capacity.
Absolutely. And in addition to all that, what brings satellite operators even closer physically to the consumer is the off-the-shelf, the commercial handset, yeah. the smartphone device. And before we got up on stage, and you're all in for a treat here because you're going to hear something new. Backstage, we were talking about. I was going to ask you what your perspective was on direct-to-device, since we're talking about getting close to the consumer. And you said you were going to come up on stage and talk about something brand new that you haven't announced yet that you're going to do here in the direct-to-device space. So tell us about it. I'm excited.
So this is true. We haven't announced anything. This is our announcement actually on direct. So first of all, look, we believe direct-to-device is a huge opportunity. And we think that opportunity is going to evolve over multiple years, right? It's not going to be a big bang growth. I think it's going to be a midterm growth. And we absolutely believe that there are many different applications that are going to be built on top of what we do today and enhance our capabilities even further in the future. So we've been thinking really for a year now, what is our play? How do we participate, given our infrastructure, given our investments, the priorities that we've been building? And I'm delighted to announce that we are announcing today a strategic partnership with Link Global. I see my partner in crime, Ramu Patarazu, right there in the audience, the CEO of Link. Ramu is not a stranger to SES. He's been around SES for a long, long time and been my partner in driving a lot of strategic initiatives. But our minds were aligned. So we are announcing an investment in Link and a global partnership with them. But in addition to that, we're announcing new services that we will be providing, and Link would be the first one to use them to direct-to-device operators and players. We believe our network in space, specifically MEO, is a great advantage to be able to move traffic between LEO constellations to MEO to deliver real-time services. We also believe that our ground infrastructure is an advantage that a lot of the direct-to-device can be using, i.e. our ground as a service. So instead of building their own infrastructures that require a lot of capital and takes a lot of time. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of the gating factors in getting a constellation up and running and getting production going is actually having the right ground infrastructure in place to be able to do it. So we're going to be offering that, working with Link for them to be the first driver in the marketplace. We're also excited because we're going to partner in a go-to-market perspective in how do we take this service to our customers. Especially, I'm excited about government, I'm excited about automotive, I'm excited about mobile network operators, where we can take those capabilities to them, and we will leverage our strong go-to-market in these segments to provide those services to our customers. As I said, we'll invest in Link, and we also think that Ramu and his team can benefit from our TTC and M capabilities from our GEO satellites. A lot of the LEO players do not have real visibility where their satellites are. To be able to provide that TTC and M capability to them is also a value add that we can provide to the marketplace. So it's look, I am really excited about this partnership and when we can take it, and that's our entry into direct-to-device, right? Excellent. And one last thing we will work with Ramu and the team also to bring their manufacturing to Europe. Given the dynamics in the world, every continent, every political entity is looking for sovereignty, so we will bring that capability to Europe to make sure that we can create an opportunity to participate in European projects.
That's very exciting. Congratulations to Link. Congratulations to you both. I remember when Link first announced that they had made that connection direct to a satellite with a commercial handset, which to me, I mean, still the physics of that is just mind-blowing to me. It's very exciting, and we've seen some other partnerships, so it's great to see SES getting involved in that as well. And you haven't announced that. You're going to announce that later.
We're going to announce it later. So the market close in Europe is now. So I think we're going to push the trigger now to put the press release and put it out in the market.
Excellent.
So you are the first to know. Please spread the word.
There you go. Congratulations on the announcement. So at this conference, we're going to hear a lot about potentially new satellite service customers having to choose between single orbit satellite service, multi-orbit. We've talked a lot about it already. And I know you're going to talk about this tomorrow on the panel, the Tuesday opening general session. But we have a lot of new people at this conference. Many of them find this technology to be complex and sometimes difficult to understand. What do you think is the most essential information people have to understand about this choice between single orbit, multi-orbit, LEO, MEO, GEO? Is there a choice? Do they have to choose? What would you say to somebody who doesn't know anything about this technology? What do you need to know about this choice?
So look, fundamentally, there are critical decisions you have to make as you build your connectivity network, right? We are a big believer that there is no one provider or one orbit that can do everything you need it to do. That's our fundamental belief. That's our fundamental assumption, right? The technology is evolving so fast. I mean, I just talked about Link and how we're going to connect through inter-satellite relays, right? And to move data real time and deliver it to locations where the customers really need it. we've proven that technology with Planet Labs, right? Under a NASA project last year, right? That it works and you can connect it and data flows. We proved it with others that we haven't announced in the marketplace. So technology, both in terms of connections between different orbits as well as within the orbits, is moving extremely fast. So our belief is actually not only you need a multi-orbit solution, it doesn't mean you have to use it all the time, but actually we're moving towards a hybrid space architecture. And the difference between multi-orbit, and multi-orbit you kind of decide, where do I put the traffic? Do I keep it on LEO? Do I put it on MEO? Do I put it in GEO? You know, should I have backup services in case something happens? In a hybrid space architecture, traffic moves seamlessly. Why do you need that? First of all, resilience. You need resilience. Second, we all know, no matter how big your constellation is, there are contention areas where you will suffer in terms of throughput and capacity available. No matter, of course, the bigger your constellation is, the better you are, but no matter where, we know this. We know this because we work in multi-orbit solutions on ships, on planes, in the field today, right? So having that resilience and having that optionality and be able to smartly drive the traffic to where is the best solution for the application is the architecture that will persist. You know, it may sound very strange today, it may sound a little bit futuristic, it's not. It will happen. We actually have a project right now for a very large defense, Department of Defense, to implement this architecture exactly how I described. Now, of course, in military, there are many good reasons why you want to do it, right? But I tell you, in commercial applications, it's the same. I mean, today, in cruise, we coexist with Starlink. More than 100 cruise lines, ships, large ships, floating cities, we coexist. It's been happening for the last 3 years. Both of us are growing significantly. Both, on the same ships, driven by the demand that the ships are wanting to have broadband-like capacity like you are, you know, on shore into the ships. A lot of it has to do with the services they're driving, a lot to do with the expectation of the passengers that they want to have this connectivity, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, we are unable, just so I'm clear, to fulfill their demands all the time. So the ships are getting smarter. They're actually beginning, and we're helping them, to move the traffic between the two. So it's no longer, okay, we're going to put this type of traffic on Starlink, we're going to put this type of traffic on SES. It is now intermingled, and we've announced partnership with Keep Layers last week, right, and the week before, where we're intelligently managing that network. This is now. It's happening. So my message is the architecture, not for every single application, is going to be hybrid architecture going forward. And the technology will evolve very, very fast to make that actually simple to the clients. The worst thing we could do is make that even more difficult. The fact that we're dealing with complexity is a given, but we will create a simplistic solutions where the customer, it's actually seamless to the customer. They can track it. They can see where the traffic is going, but they don't need to worry about doing it themselves and, you know, steering it. By the way, in terrestrial network, this is happening too. I mean, software-defined network, SD-WANs has been introduced 7, 8 years ago. You know, I came from Deutsche Telekom. Many of our customers actually deployed that in order to manage, you know, I want this traffic to be going out, and I want intelligently to steer it between MPLS network and dedicated fiber networks. Sometimes I want to break it out into mobile networks. It's happening. That's exactly what will happen in space.
Yeah. So what you're saying is when you were here up on stage last year with Gwen and all the other CEOs, when you said there's enough room for everybody,
yes,
you meant it. I'll be honest with you. At first, I was like thinking very traditionally, like somebody's going to dominate here. But you know, really, the nature of the technology makes it so that everybody needs something different. So there's really not a choice. It's mostly like, you know, what type of customer you are, where you need it. You're going to coexist with a lot of different services.
Yes.
And that's the environment you're trying to put together.
Yes. And by the way, nobody wants to be dependent on one particular provider or one particular solution. They want to have optionality.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to talk about O3B mPower, because we're on second generation here. I remember following this through its conception. Your second generation was operational last year, and you've since launched 2 more satellites just this past December, and you have 3 more coming this year, right? From your perspective, coming into SES last year, somebody who's worked in business and commercial connectivity solutions, how do you see mPower as living up to the ambitious vision that was rolled out with it when it was first revealed to our industry? How is it transforming business for your enterprise customers?
So look, first of all, mPower was fundamentally a game changer for SES, right? Because not only because it's the second generation of our MEO platform, but because it really evolved the platform dramatically. I mean, it's a truly software-defined satellite. I mean, each satellite has more than 3,000 beams, right? It's a digital beam forming capability already introduced in it. You know, we can follow an object from one side of the Earth to the other side of the Earth without interruption, changing beams and orchestrating it. So, but of course, as you know, when we launched, we were challenged because we had these power issues that we needed to deal with. And therefore, since the launch of the product, since the launch of the 6 satellites, they're running, you know, at sub-capacity, which we were planning to have, right? And a lot of it had to do with power modules. I mean, we've talked about it in the industry. And one thing we haven't talked about very openly was the fact that we were running them very, very carefully until we get the new satellites up, and then we can raise the power of these satellites. But also going through incredible sunstorms that we experienced last year, and you know, actually those helped us, believe it or not, because part of the issue, without going into a lot of details, was a proton buildup on a satellite, and when these showers came through, they actually cleaned the satellites, and the protons buildup takes a long time, and then there's another shower that cleans it up, et cetera, et cetera. So actually, we're beginning to get a lot more confidence now, especially with satellite 7 and 8 making their way into their orbits and IoT, to start raising capacity by raising power, right?
Right.
So 7 and 8 are going to come in. They'll still take their shape. We will raise capacity by 30% by April of that constellation. When 7 and 8 are actually in orbit and in service, we will raise it another 30%. And then when we have the next 3 satellites that come in, you know, we're going to amplify the power again. And then the last 2 satellites will put us into, you know, a different configuration of a constellation that gives our terminals visibility of 2 satellites at a time and change the game completely for us. So it's a long answer to your question. You know, it still has not reached the expectations that we had for the mPower constellation. We're still working through that in order to get there, but it's beginning to gain momentum. It's beginning to get utilized dramatically. I mean, we're sold out, right? I mean, that's our biggest challenges. Between the governments and crews, you know, it sucked up all the capacity that we had. So adding this capacity is really important for us as we go forward. So, you know, let's see in 2026 when we get all of these things up and it gets to close to where we were expecting it to be at the start, we will start seeing the real benefit of mPower and its power. I still remain, as we look at IRIS² and the next generation of MEOs, and you look at the sophistication and the technology we have in mPower payload, it's still quite impressive.
Excellent. Everybody is going to get asked this question here this week, but I don't know if you've heard or turned on the news. A lot is changing every day.
Ask Mike and his tariffs, yeah.
Yeah. In addition to the tariffs we put on Mike in his speaking time, we have a new presidential administration, and your launch partner, and also in some ways your competitor, Elon Musk, is influential in that government. We have new government in Germany. The geopolitical tension between Russia and Ukraine is ever escalating, and we have China, tariffs, shift in the global economy. Lots of change. Every day I turn it on and there's something that's changed. All of this is happening as we're still in this kind of post-COVID adjustment period. Historically, the satellite industry does not like instability. It's a very stable-oriented business. Does this geopolitical environment make it easier or harder for SES to provide the global connectivity in this environment? How does SES manage this change?
Well, look, we don't like uncertainty, we don't like instability, so there's no question that this environment that's making it more challenging for us, right, to work. I mean, we've all, I'm sure a lot of colleagues in this audience grew up in an integrated supply chain, global channels, global partners that we use, and we're accustomed of, sourcing capabilities around the globe, right? And that's being challenged, right, fundamentally. You also have now the governments. I mean, the U.S. has been very vocal for many, many years, asking Europe to spend more and be more self-reliant on security and other aspects. And these geopolitical dynamics are certainly now, making Europe realize that this is now the time to do it, right? So on one hand, we see a lot of opportunity happening, in different governments getting very, very serious, and many commercial customers beginning to get very cautious about how they build their business models going forward, and where do they source their technologies, where do they source their services. But on the other hand, I mean, it creates challenges, right? So we like to use technology from all over the world. I mean, if we have to pay tariffs to bring that technology together somewhere else, or we then get limited in what we use and where we use it, it's a challenge that we have to figure it out, right? In how we drive our business models going forward. But I have to emphasize, I mean, the opportunity is there as well. So we need to see how does this settle down, and how does this evolve? Maybe it never settles down, right? Maybe it's going to continue to change, and we have to be ready for that.
Yeah.
So we are in SES. Look, it's a global business. We're not a large company. We're a small company of 2,000 individuals. We'll be 4,000 individuals with Intelsat. When Intelsat is approved, we're spread globally. In the U.S., we're very proud of our space and defense business that operates in a very specific setup, legal setup that gives them access to projects that otherwise we wouldn't be able to get to. And they've built capabilities that both Space Force, MOD, and intelligence services really like, and we continue to grow that. We have roots in Europe, and we're building capabilities in Europe that basically taking the same blueprint we have in the US and replicating them and growing them. So yeah, it's in certain way it becomes inefficient because you have to rebuild it multiple times and potentially have to be very careful about where you source your technologies. But on the other hand, the amount of investments that we're beginning to see, not just from Europe. I mean, look at the US. I mean, Trump was the creator of Space Force, right? I mean, and he is, if I'm a betting man, I would say that when the budget passes in the US, space will be a bigger beneficiary than many other areas.
Right.
Europe is doing the same thing, right? I mean, they're amplifying their spend in general in military capabilities, but space is front and center because communications is one of the core capabilities you got to have, right? We're seeing the same thing in Asia. We're seeing Japan, South Korea, Southeast Asia, all of them investing in this area. So I'm not worried about the investment. I'm worried about complexity and how we access technologies and skills.
Well, the positive outlook is that we survived COVID. That was a huge change. That was one where, I was like, the resiliency of this industry is really going to be tested. Supply chain all the way down. And look, here we are. So, we're adapting to these changes. And you're right, as you mentioned, like the first Trump administration was the creation of Space Force. That was a big change, right? And there were opportunities and challenges associated with that change, just like there are today. And fortunately, we have everybody engaged in this conversation. We can talk about these as risks and also opportunities. So thank you for addressing these challenges. And I'm sure you're going to talk about it tomorrow with the other operators as well. So looking forward, hopefully we get a couple years off from change, maybe. How is SES looking and planning to participate in this thing that we call the future space economy, where we have access to space, we have multiple launchers, we have multiple businesses, industries operating in space, we've got commercial space stations, you know, we somehow figured out how to organize all this stuff and see it all in space. How is SES planning to participate in that world?
It's a very exciting world, right? There's a lot really of opportunity in front of us. So look, we focus on doing our basics right, which is what I described in terms of our strategy evolution, right? But also within the strategy execution, you know, we're changing the way we're approaching things. As an example, I was actually very surprised that at SES, but I think a lot of my colleagues will support that, when we thought about innovation and drove new projects, they were all done as islands. So every time we launched a geo capability, right, it always started with a white piece of paper, and you build on your knowledge in the past, and you build this new thing, and I'm going to exaggerate, then it's like an island. Then you do the next one. Same thing with MEO. We'll look at, you know, classic, you know, O3B classic infrastructure. We look at Empower. We always kind of started it from scratch every time. We no longer think like that. We're thinking about building networks, end-to-end networks, and we're going to change our innovation cycles, not to be, you know, this big peaks and valleys of investment, to actually be in a consistent yearly investment cycle and really get into an iterative you know, improvement cycles. I mean, things that Starlink is doing really, really well, and things that the IT industry does every day, right? We don't do a lot of waterfall developments or kind of big thing and then you take 5 years to do it, right? No, we got to do everything, you know, incremental improvements every year. So that's a big shift for us. So we will have the time to anticipate, we'll have a time to react, but we will build networks that are forward and backward compatibles in a sense, because they are software defined. They are going to be able to be upgraded in space with software, of course, not hardware going forward. We're going to look at vertical integration very, very seriously. You know, both, we talked about the downstream vertical integration with the clients, but we're also looking at upstream, right? We are challenged today in our supply chain. Right? It takes us too long and it's too expensive in bringing new technologies to the marketplace. So we are going to be looking at ways of how do we, you know, improve that? How do we, and you know, everybody I talk to with the large providers, industry providers, I mean, they all agree with the fact that they need to change, but I'm yet to see clear plans on how are they going to change. So we have no choice as operators in general, not just SES, to actually challenge that status quo, right? I'm not saying we should be manufacturing satellites and doing everything end to end. I'm saying we need to be looking at that supply chain differently. And then we need to build these digital platforms that are able to be scaled for different solutions.
Yeah.
We talked about direct-to-device. I mean, I'm so excited about direct-to-device because Ramo and his team will be using our infrastructure to accelerate them, to move them faster, right, into the market and leverage it, versus building, you know, gateways all over the world. So that's how we will participate, by changing and evolving and making sure that we're agile, flexible, and listening to the market.
Well, that sounds exciting. I know some of you will have questions for Adel. Adel's going to be back here on this stage tomorrow morning for the panel, and they're doing a Q&A with the audience. So if you have questions, bring them here tomorrow. We don't have the time to jump into a full Q&A. So back here tomorrow morning, same place. Adel will be joined by the other operator CEOs, including Intelsat, so you can ask questions maybe more about what's going on there. But Adel, thank you so much for being with us. You've got a very busy and exciting year ahead of you. Congratulations to you and on your announcement with Link, and enjoy the rest of your show here. Let's give Adel Al-Saleh another round of applause. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of you and to our friends at MDA Space for supporting this. This is the end of our keynote luncheon. We have a conference program in the afternoon starting very soon. Enjoy the rest of your day here with us at Satellite and the rest of your week, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Congratulations. It was great.